Hi,
We are live.
thank you. Good morning. This is Senate Judiciary. Our first order of business in the second half of the meeting is the confirmation of Judge Barrett. And I believe she's here with us.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? We don't have Senator Buchowski is not here either. Is that okay?
I just texted her.
Or Senator Barrett. I just want to make sure we have enough people.
I believe we have a quorum with the three of us.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you knew.
And I'm sure they'll be here shortly. So,
yep.
Judge Barrett's resume is on the webpage. If you would like to look at it. And I believe she's here, and we call her to.
Hi, I'm Jen Barrett. Nice to meet you.
Welcome to Senate Judiciary.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Maybe we could go around the room and introduce ourselves and to Mr. Tayo, who's on Zoom and will be the next witness or the next appointment that we're going to discuss.
I'll start.
I'm Dixie. Oh, why don't you start?
You always say Dick. We'll start with.
Start with Senator Norris.
Senator Norris, Franklin County.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Tanya Buchowski, Chittenden Central.
Not Shane, Wyndham County.
Nice to meet you.
Dick Sears, Bennington County.
Nice to see you.
Senator Barrett should be in a moment.
Awesome.
Okay, please.
How would you like to conduct this, Senator Sears? Do you want, you're on mute, but do you want her to just introduce
Muted
yourself?
myself because the dog was barking. If the judge would like to make an opening statement, we'd appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about your experience and why you agreed to become a judge, or accepted the appointment, I should say.
Thank you. So I'm Jennifer Barrett. I'm born and raised in Brattleboro, Vermont. I've lived in Derby for the last 8 years. I went to Brattleboro Union High School. I went to the local public schools in Brattleboro. I graduated from the Brattleboro Union High School. I went to Vermont Technical College for a year doing the VAST program. It's a program where they allow high school seniors to go to college a year early on a scholarship and graduate both from that program and your high school. So I did that. Then I went to Champlain College in Burlington. I graduated with a degree in digital forensics. And after that, I went to law school. In law school, I focused on criminal law. I wanted to be a public defender at the time. I went to San Francisco to work for a serious felony public defender in San Francisco and helped with cases he did. Hello.
Hello.
He did cases that were predominantly sex assaults or homicides. And I worked with him for a period of time while I was in San Francisco. I met a federal judge and did an externship with him in the Silicon Valley. And we did a number of class action type lawsuits, civil lawsuits was his focus there. When I came back, I needed to do the clerking requirement. At the time, you had to do 3 months with an attorney in Vermont. And I hadn't necessarily contemplated whether or not I would come back to Vermont, but the plan at that time was to come back. I wanted to clerk with Mimi Brill in Brattleboro, but she had just hired a new attorney at the time and didn't have time to clerk. And so at that time, I really wanted to be a public defender. I worked in San Francisco at a time where there was a lot of controversy around the prosecution, a lot of corruption with police, and they had a drug lab scandal. So it was very much of the mindset that I wanted to be a public defender. But Mimi didn't have time for me at the time. And so I met Tracy Shriver and I worked for her and did my clerking hours. After that, I worked in the Orleans and Bennington State's Attorney's Office as deputies. And then in 2015, I was elected as the Orleans County State's Attorney and moved back to Derby. And so during that period of time, I've supervised a number of attorneys. I've tried over 50 cases to verdict in front of juries, had an incredible amount of time in front of judges, and really developed my courtroom appearance at that time. Since being appointed to the bench, I'm in Brattleboro. And so I sold my house in Derby and enrolled my son in the schools in Brattleboro, and we're back down there. And I have been sitting in Wyndham Family Court. So I'm in court 5 days a week. I hear divorces on Monday. On Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I hear the juvenile docket. I hear restraining orders also on Wednesdays. And then on Friday, I do the mental health docket. So I deal with people who are involuntarily hospitalized or medicated, and people who are housed at the Brattleboro Retreat, but residents of anywhere in the state. And so that's what I've been doing. I wanted to be a judge after the pandemic. There was an incredible backlog, and I really felt like my skills that I developed in the courtroom and my ability to hold a large caseload and triage the needs of different cases would be well suited to become a judge. And there was also the transition into the technology aspect of Odyssey and remote hearings. And I thought that having judges who had a technology background would benefit the judiciary. And I, at that point, thought that my skills would lead to the bench. And so that's why I applied initially. And certainly having been on the bench for several months now, there's things that I thought could be easy fixes that aren't. And there are things, it's definitely been a learning process in terms of being a judge.
Awesome. Thank you.
Dick, you're muted. Senator Sears.
I was just muted for the dog. I wanted to explain the process. We have some, I know that members of the committee probably have some questions for you. We've also seen some letters from various individuals, which we will post on our committee website once we let them know that that would be public, and if they really intended it to be public. We would also, before we vote, we'll give you an opportunity to respond to any of those if you so desire. So I just want to make clear that the committee is not voting today on whether to confirm or not confirm you. It would be our normal practice is usually to wait at least a week to hear from any citizens. So any citizens who would like to testify or want to send emails or letters, they would send them to Peggy Delaney, our committee assistant, who will then post them on our webpage or schedule you for testimony if that's what you prefer. So with that, open it up to any questions from committee members.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask just procedurally, would you then want to hold questions about those letters until they're posted? Or is it all right to ask questions based on those letters?
I think it's okay to ask questions based on those letters.
All right. And I'm not sure if you've seen, probably haven't seen that letter, but there is an email from someone describing a series of events in a courthouse involving an employee with a gun, and their contention is that your handling of that situation was not what it should have been. Within the confines of what you can tell us about that case, and so this was an employee who, at least alleged in the letter, had a weapon in the courthouse contrary to law, and had on their personal space some sort of disturbing little postings about ballistic angles and things like that, and that they allege also that there was an incident, kind of emotional incident with this person clearing at the courthouse, that sort of thing. So wondering what you can tell us about that.
So
I'm really sorry, but before we do that, would it make sense to provide the letter to the judge so that you can see what the content is before answering, if you want to see it?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know that you heard your question.
Senator Sears, I was just wondering if, I know the letter has not been posted publicly, but we are discussing the letter publicly.
Well,
Would it make sense to provide the letter to the judge so that she can read it answering the question?
Yeah,
Sorry,
probably would.
All right.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
I think it makes sense.
so Peggy?
Yes.
Could you? It's a little, so then we should allow you time to read the letter. Or I suppose,
Oh, I have it right here.
okay, we could, you know, I suppose read it aloud, but,
Why don't we do this? I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask, and maybe we can come back to that, Senator.
absolutely.
Judge, a little bit about judges don't get to deal with just what they've experienced, and your experience has been mainly in criminal court. When you get into civil matters, can you speak a little bit about your experiences there, and how you will deal with litigants that are, for lack of a better term, slip and fall, or whatever the case might be?
Yes, so my experience is predominantly in criminal law, but I did do a stint with a federal judge doing class action lawsuits. That was civil litigation. And so that was for a semester during law school, my final semester. And that gave me a good crash course of what civil litigation is like. In addition to that, we not prosecute, but we litigated civil matters for the purposes of post-conviction relief, which I'm sure you all hear a lot about. And during my term as a state's attorney, we litigated a number of very complex civil issues as it related to post-conviction relief. For example, there was a conviction that was a homicide conviction that they wanted overturned based on the notion that the person was using Chantix as a medication and that impacted their intent. And so that was complex civil litigation as well. And so there are portions of my career as a prosecutor that were civil related, but I also did have some experience with the federal judge writing decisions on civil matters and watching civil matters play out. I would also note that while my background's not in civil, my background is also not in divorce, and I sit on divorce cases now. And what I've done is I've taken the rules of family procedure, I've read them all, I've immersed myself in the practice of something that I did not know a lot about when I started, and I feel comfortable in divorce actions now. And that was the biggest area of law that was new to me in the current docket that I'm sitting in. But I take proactive steps. I think that's part of growing and learning, and you never know everything, and you're never going to stop learning in this job and in jobs similar to this. So my response is that I have limited experience in civil matters. I'm eager to learn and will do that. I also know that I have sat on small claims cases since I started on the bench. So there is civil practice that's already come in front of me.
I think Peggy's printing.
So miss the.
Okay. I don't think these are the letters that I was talking about.
That's, there was that one, and then there was.
Senator Sears, I think it might make sense for us to, oops, it's gone. Oh,
I'm here. Yeah.
I think it might make sense for us to defer questions about those letters, given that the candidate hasn't read them, and Peggy has given me a couple that aren't the one that I was talking about. Do you think it makes sense to defer those to another day?
Yes, I do.
Okay. In that case, I'll hold my questions about them. And I guess the best we could ask is that when they go up on the website, if you could just advise yourself with them.
Absolutely. I'd love the opportunity to review them and respond to them. I will just say, just briefly, without having read the letter, that the incident with a firearm and an employee occurred while I was a judge. And so I'm not sure that I have a lot of relevant knowledge to that event.
Yeah.
But certainly I'm happy to respond to any questions that you may have about that incident once
Yeah.
I've reviewed the letter.
And I think it's fair to say that the people writing, at least my understanding was that they believed that their comments would be public, but Senator Sears wants to double check and make sure that they know that. So sorry for the two-part process, but I think it makes sense.
Thank you. Can you please tell us a little bit about your philosophy around restorative justice?
Yes. So I was a full proponent of restorative justice. Starting in high school, I was a member of the first diversion panel that existed in the town of Brattleboro as a high school member when they started the diversion program. And so it's something that I am a proponent of. I diverted a large portion of my cases through both the restorative justice. There's two centers. Some communities have one. So in Orleans County, there was the restorative justice program and the diversion program. And we had programs to divert in all of those. And so there was a number of ways that we diverted cases. All cases involving the school and high school students were presumptively diverted automatically by law enforcement directly to those agencies without even coming to my office, which was a protocol that I had put into place. Other cases, law enforcement had the discretion to do direct referrals without consulting with me if they believed it was appropriate. Once cases came into my office as a prosecutor, I reviewed them and diverted as many as met the qualifications. Often we would even be diverting cases with people with relatively significant records, but based on the offense, if it was a minor misdemeanor or otherwise appropriate, we would divert those cases. I also used the restorative justice as a direct referral for cases there too. So I believe in restorative justice. I myself, if you've had an opportunity to read my application, went through diversion as a 18-year-old. And so I see the benefits of being able to make a mistake and then move on from that mistake and own your mistake, and how I completely understand how offenses could define your entire life without opportunities such as restorative justice. So it's something that I support and I have been supportive of as a prosecutor. And certainly in my role as a judge, I wouldn't see diversion because those cases are diverted before the court sees them. But I certainly encourage the parties to look at restorative components as part of the juvenile system in cases where it's appropriate.
Quick question, and I'm sorry if you already mentioned this, but how long were you at the public defender's office in San Francisco?
So I did that, I was there for a long summer. I think I went out in May, and then it was until I started the semester with the federal judge. And so it was several months. It would have been what constituted a semester, if that makes sense. With that public defender, and he had a correlation to the law school that I worked on, and so there were some cases that had a New Hampshire component, which is how I had met him and gone out to work there.
Gotcha. So you've kind of seen both sides of the courtroom a bit, and how do you think that influences your current perspective in your role, having been on both sides of the courtroom?
I think being on both sides has just made it easier to step in the role of someone who's neutral. In terms of spending a lot of time as a prosecutor, I know that people assume that there's going to be this prosecutorial line when you sit on the bench. But what I found being in the courtroom is that I really don't feel that way. I feel like it's an entirely different role. And so I look at every case individually, but I think that having experienced both sides, you're sympathetic to the day-to-day needs of attorneys when they need continuances or when they can't reach their clients, or the complicating factors surrounding the human aspect of litigation. And so I think having experienced those things as an attorney or as working with the clients at the public defender's office, I think that I'm more sympathetic.
Thank you.
Other questions for Judge Barrett?
Not seeing-
Judge, thank you.
Thank
Go ahead. Thank you very much.
I don't see any other questions in the room. That's all.
Thank you very much, and we'll be back in touch.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to review those letters so I can respond to them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Nate Basayo. Did I pronounce that properly?
You did. You did good. Nate Bazio. You got it.
Good. Nate, you've been nominated to be a member of the Vermont Human Rights Commission, I think. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Nate Bazio. I'm from Colchester. I currently live in Colchester. I'm originally from Jericho. I grew up, in Jericho. I became disabled when I was 14 years old. That put me in a power wheelchair. And growing up, I just kind of learned, having a disability, it doesn't make you less of a person. And that if you work towards your goals and you get it, you can still get it there. But during the time growing up, going to school, I had just, I had noticed and seen some things and faced some things myself that people who are, maybe not the same are treated a little bit differently. And it's kind of marked of my life experiences. I graduated from college at St. Michael's College. I decided I wanted to go into the business world. So after that, I decided to get my MBA at SUNY Albany. And then I moved back to Vermont. And I started working at as a business manager at UVM. But during that time, I had always been involved in advocating for better employment for people with disabilities, better treatment of people with disabilities. And this is actually my fourth appointment as a Human Rights Commission, because back in, I believe it was 2007, Governor Douglas at the time saw me speaking about some issues and thought I would be a good person to join the commission. So I went and joined the commission back then, and since then it has been a very rewarding and fulfilling experience for me. It has opened my eyes to many, many different things, many topics and issues that not just nationwide, but in the state of Vermont, ranging for a variety of different issues. It's also kind of shaped my later career choices. After I decided to change careers, I decided to pursue work in helping communities. So I am now working as the coordinator for the Vermont Center for Independent Living, which is an agency that assists people with disabilities. So I basically manage our Northwestern branch office area. So I just enjoy listening to topics dealing with various issues. I enjoy open communications, hearing the different viewpoints of people. And it's just been a rewarding experience. And I just can't talk enough about how much good I feel this commission does.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's sometimes a thankless job. And so appreciate your willingness to serve again. What are some of the most challenging cases that you've had? That you might just give us a little information.
I think there's a lot of different ones. I think the ones where are most challenging are ones where you almost sense a deeper systemic issue. It's not something that you can just say, okay, this, here's what you can do this and this to make it right. It's more deep-rooted issues where, I don't know if you want to talk about, if that's what you're talking about, specific cases, but it's when you reach down,
Well, not necessarily specific cases, but the types that are both rewarding, but at the same time frustrating you as.
I mean, I think as you say, we see ebbs and flows of type of cases we get. Obviously, I think things when you look at people who are members of a disenfranchised community, whether it be racial grounds, national origin, does it really just not being treated differently? I think those are always the cases when you hear whether it be housing cases where somebody might be denied housing basis on their protected category, and just really trying to change somebody's opinion about it, trying to find something about that, or whether it has to do with employment or harassment. I think that's always a issue that you see, coming up, or issues. Just issues where you see like a bigger body, whether it be a employer or somebody being able to, feeling like they can do somebody to a member of a community that, doesn't have the resources or is part of a protected community, that just making sure they have an equal say and equal access to the goods and services.
Any other questions? Nate, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we will, if there's anyone who has comments on Nate's appointment, we'll be happy to hear them, and we'll vote on them soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, I think that does it for the week, and appreciate all the good work.